And we are back now to begin a new project with the New York Times that we are calling Battleground Tracker. We'll be working with a group called YouGov. We've assembled an online panel of 100,000 voters who are in every competitive Senate and congressional district. Between now and Election Day, we're going to be in contact with that panel to gauge the mood of the electorate and to estimate what the results would be if the election were held at that point. We're at this point to talk about this morning the project and the results of the first survey. Anthony Salvanto is our CBS News Elections Director. David Leonhardt is the editor of the New York Times Upshot. Rounding out our analysis will be Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report and John Dickerson, our own CBS News political director. So, Anthony, the big question, if the election were held today, based on the data that you all have assembled, the big question is, would the Democrats hold their majority in the Senate?
No, our estimate has the Republicans taking it at least 51-49. And there's a little bit of movement maybe towards 52, 53 in some scenarios there. But Republicans, we find, have this edge because they have so many options, because there are so many states in play now. We always knew that the Democrats would have a hard time holding a lot of these southern states, these conservative states, where there's a lot of Senate races, and they're defending more seats. But we see a very expansive map out of this data. We see a lot of races that are very, very tight, too.
So, 6 seats. The Republicans would have to hold all that they've got and then pick up 6 seats to claim the majority. Is that right?
That's right. And, we think they have an inside track or even a certainty on at least 2 or 3 of them. So they really just need to get a couple more. Now, pushing back against this a little bit, though, is the Democrats would like to try to take Kentucky. They'd like to try to take the Georgia seat. And they think they have good candidates there, but right now in our polling, they're just a little short.
Okay, so David, what are the races? Democrats and the 2 independents in the Senate hold 55 Senate seats, Republicans 45. What are the races that will have to change that if the Republicans do in fact take control?
The thing to remember is senators run every 6 years. So the people running for election now ran 6 years ago, 2008, a year of a Democratic wave, the Obama wave. And so you've got a lot of these races in Republican-leaning states most of the time, and that's the problem for Democrats here. So it's North Carolina, where Kay Hagan is running a tough re-election campaign. It's Arkansas, with the same with Mark Pryor. It's Alaska. We're talking about a lot of states that in the presidential elections vote Republican. And so essentially, although many things can happen, the Democrats still have a good chance to keep it. The reason we think Republicans are favored are, if each of these states simply go the way it goes in the presidential election, Republicans get Senate control.
Well, I would say at this point it would appear if the election were held today, the Democrats would probably lose Montana.
Yes.
Probably lose South Dakota, probably lose West Virginia. Good news for the Democrats, if the election were held today, they would probably hold their seats in New Hampshire and Colorado. And Anthony, you're talking about that race in Kentucky, and also the race down in Georgia where Sam Nunn's daughter, Michelle Nunn, is the Democratic candidate. Talk a little bit about those races, David.
So I think Kentucky is a pretty tough task for the Democrats. I think Mitch McConnell should be considered a pretty strong favorite. A state that is as strongly as Republican as Kentucky, the idea of it flipping to the president's party in a midterm election would be exceedingly unusual from political history. So I think Kentucky's a really tough task for the Democrats. Not impossible, but tough. Georgia is easier, and it's in part because of demographic change. Georgia has a growing Latino population. Black turnout has risen a lot. And so while I think Michelle Nunn is probably a slight underdog, she has a real shot to win that race, which would be very important for the Democrats.
Bob, one of the things we see out of this is that with so many tight races, 1 point, 2 points here and there, yes, our estimates point in one direction at this point. We should think of this as a baseline. We're not trying to make predictions here. We're trying to gauge with this panel where we are today. But it tells me that the local campaigns are really going to matter because 1 or 2 points here can move easily. I mean, we're going to track this, and I suspect we're going to come back here through the fall and see some back and forth, which should be pretty fun to watch.
I want to bring in Amy and John. Amy, well, is there anything that ties all these races together? Is this going to be any kind of a wave election, as we call it, or are these all individual races?
Well, clearly what we're seeing in these numbers is that if there is a good news here for Republicans, is that the environment is very good for the Republicans, right? The president's overall approval rating pretty low. The enthusiasm on the part of Republicans much higher to turn out and vote than for Democrats. People aren't feeling very good about the direction of the country. And as we pointed out, so many of these states are red states carried by Mitt Romney. So that all goes to the benefit of Republicans. What's standing in their way, what's standing in Republicans' way, in many cases, are Republicans themselves. We saw them in 2010 and 2012 lose what were supposed to be slam dunk seats because their candidates were terrible. Candidates matter, campaigns matter, and this is where Democrats say the other thing that matters is that Republicans' approval ratings much lower than it was in 2010. This is a very different kind of environment. People have seen Republicans in control of the House, and they don't like what they see. And so that's the one thing that Democrats have. The other thing is that they know how to go and work on the ground. They say Barack Obama, that campaign, they revolutionized the way we go, target and turn out voters. You're not going to be able to see any of that in polling. The only way you'll be able to see it is actually when we get the election day results.
And so when people in these states, these key Senate states, are watching this election, they're going to have the traditional feeling of disappointment. They're not going to hear people talking about what you've been talking about on the show all day today, the things that are roiling the world. They may not even hear the things that roil us at home, because Democrats, to push back against this national wave, all these advantages, and I'd add one other, the electorate in an off-year election tends to be older, which tends to benefit Republicans. They get more of that vote. To turn out single women, minorities, younger voters, Democrats, those folks don't turn up in midterm elections. So how are Democrats going to get at them? They're going to target them with specific, there's going to be a lot of talk about women's health, because Democrats want to turn out suburban women voters and single women voters. An important issue, but not maybe what's on the top of everybody's mind. There will be a lot of these attempts to narrowcast into those constituencies to increase Democratic turnout in this special election year.
You know, Ronald Reagan got a larger percentage of the white vote than Mitt Romney did, and Ronald Reagan won. Am I right in that?
Romney got
Romney got
more of the white vote,
Romney
but there
got a
was
larger
share of it.
percentage of that. It didn't sound right. It was coming out of my mouth. These things happen.
So
he got a
surprising.
larger percentage of the white vote than Ronald Reagan did, and yet he lost this election. But you had Barack Obama in this race in 2012. He's not there this time. Will that make a difference?
Well, we have some evidence that it's not just Obama. Obama as a candidate matters, but if you look at some other elections, if you look at some midterm elections, it seems that voter turnout among African Americans has risen in a way that isn't just about Obama. And of course, we have vastly more Latinos and Asian Americans, two groups that vote heavily Democratic. As John pointed out, many of these groups don't vote as heavily in midterm elections. It will be a big test of the Democratic turnout machine in 2014.
Having said that, we see historically that people who go to the polls and disapprove of the sitting administration when the president's not on the ballot vote 80% or more against his party's congressional candidate. So to that extent, yes, he is on the ballot.
That's right. That's right. And in many of these states, these are not heavily minority majority states, where the electorate is going to look different. This is not a battle for control of Pennsylvania or Florida, Colorado being an exception in this race. But these are a lot of southern states, or a lot of states where the white vote is still the key to winning these elections.
All right. Well, we have to end it there. Thank you all. We'll be back. We'll see you guys next month when we'll see if the election were held then, what the results would be. For complete results on all of this, check out our CBS News website and the Upshot section on the NewYorkTimes.com.